Hello everyone, today I'm in Seoul, South Korea, which is not only the largest city in the country, but it's also the capital city of South Korea too. Seoul is a mix of both the old and the new. Human habitation in this region dates back over 30,000 years, and the city of Seoul has been the capital of Korea for over 600 years. Seoul has also embraced the new as well and is home to some of the world's largest auto and electronics manufacturers, including Samsung Electronics, LG Electronics, Hyundai, and the Kia corporations. And the population of the city of Seoul is approximately 9.6 million people, so it's a fairly large city, while the total population of South Korea is a bit more than 51 million people total. And some more background information on Seoul and South Korea. In the last century, the biggest event to occur on the Korean peninsula was likely the division of Korea following the Second World War by both the United States and the Soviet Union, and the subsequent civil war between the North and the South, with the U.S. and its allies supporting the South Koreans and democracy, and the Soviet Union and China supporting the North and the North Korean dictatorship. The war in Korea, which began in 1950, would last for 3 years and cost the lives of over 3 million people on both sides, the North and the South. And most of those casualties were actually civilian casualties in the North. Though the U.S. and Allied forces prevailed in pushing the North Koreans out of South Korea and maintaining a stable democracy in South Korea, the U.S. lost over 54,000 service members in the conflict, which unfortunately is comparable to the later conflict in Vietnam. The Korean War is often referred to as the Forgotten War, as most of the U.S. public instead has focused on other conflicts such as the war in Vietnam. And though the war has been over for more than 72 years, a true ceasefire was in fact never signed, and there have been ongoing military skirmishes between the two countries as almost if the war has never ended. As recently as 2024, armed conflict erupted when North Korea shelled several South Korean occupied islands that North Korea claims ownership to. As many as 200 shells were fired from North Korea towards the islands in the south, and thankfully no injuries were reported as the munitions simply fell harmlessly into the Yellow Sea. However, that's still considered an act of war when you fire 200 shells, and that was just last year. So this war in Korea on some level has continued, and helping keep the peace in the region are several active U.S. military bases with over 28,500 U.S. troops still stationed here in South Korea. And South Korea also maintains its own army, which is one of the largest in the world. And South Korea also maintains its own army, which is one of the largest in the world. And the country spends over 13% of its yearly budget on defense. Not only are South Koreans busy protecting their own home front, but the country has also been a valuable U.S. ally and has assisted the U.S. military in several wars, including the war in Vietnam, where over 325,000 South Korean troops helped fight alongside the Americans. And more recently, South Korea deployed over 24,000 troops to the Middle East to help the United States in the fight against terrorism and Al-Qaeda. And if you're wondering how much hotels are in this area, across the street is a Courtyard by Marriott, and online this is listed as a 4-star hotel, and the nightly rate is 411,000 won, which works out to roughly about 310 US dollars. And it has pretty good reviews online. It's just right here in the downtown Seoul area. And since the end of large-scale military conflict on the Korean peninsula, the two countries have taken broadly divergent paths, with South Korea developing into a very successful democracy, which is probably better known for its business savvy, while the North Korea remains under a dictatorship which has been little changed since the 1950s. And the border with North Korea is not very far from the city of Seoul, maybe only about 20 to 30 miles from where I'm at right now. As the border is not a straight line, it kind of zigzags a little bit. So historically speaking, any major armed conflict between the two sides will usually have a direct impact on the city of Seoul, given its close proximity to North Korea. However, thankfully, Seoul has not been targeted by North Korea in a major armed conflict, at least since the Korean War anyway. And however, if that ever did happen in the future, that would likely be a cause for World War III, which of course nobody wants that, and thankfully that has not happened. Anyhow, some more background information. Religion in South Korea. From a 2012 survey, 52% of South Koreans said they were religious, with 31% identifying as Christian and 17% as Buddhist, with the other 48% either identifying as non-religious or atheists. And I think that's rather interesting to have such a large percentage of the population identifying as non-religious. And what's also interesting is that's almost about a third of South Koreans are Christian, and it's not unusual to see a Catholic church here in Seoul, and they actually have a quite a long history here as well. And other notable facts about South Korea. South Korea has a universal healthcare system, which is a one-payer system that provides healthcare to all citizens, and they also have one of the longest life expectancies in the world, with the average South Korean living 83.43 years, which is rather interesting considering a 2014 Euromonitor study found that South Koreans drank the most hard liquor per week than any other country. And it said that they averaged 13.7 shots per person per week. And that is quite a bit of liquor. And another surprising fact from this survey is that Russia finished only second with 6.3 shots per person per week on average. And the USA was, somewhere in their list, rather far down, averaging only 3.3 shots per person per week. And I kind of question the data on this one, as it's rather hard to believe that South Koreans can outdrink the US by a factor of 4, and at the same time outlive Americans by more than 5 years. One possible explanation for this could be South Korea's universal healthcare system, which covers all citizens under a one-payer health network. And another possible explanation could be, other than drinking, South Koreans on average probably have a better diet than many Americans do. For example, I have not seen very many obese Koreans while here in Seoul, and I also noticed, like much of Europe, public transportation as well as walking are also more popular here than, say, in the United States. So those are just a few possible explanations to help explain the contrast between drinking popularity and the accompanying long lifespans of South Koreans versus people in the United States. Bathrooms in South Korea. Now this might sound like a strange subject, and most of the bathrooms you will find here in South Korea will probably be fine, though maybe not as nice as, say, this fancy commode here with the built-in bidet, as well as whatever else that it might have. With some of the bathrooms here, you might run into this situation where you are advised not to flush the toilet paper. Now, like I was saying, it's only some of the restrooms that are like this, and it's certainly a rather large inconvenience, or even worse, as if you can't flush your toilet paper, then what are you exactly supposed to do with it? And according to the sign, you are instructed to put the toilet paper into the trash can, and that's rather a gross thought. And the reasons why they ask people to do this, there's several reasons, but the primary ones are that the buildings here are older and that they apparently weren't built to handle the later invention of toilet paper. However, I'm not sure if I really buy these excuses, and I think what the real problem is, just in layman's terms, is that the pipes themselves, it's not that they're old, but I think they're just too small. Say like in a typical American home, the standard waste pipe is a 4-inch pipe that leads from the house out to the street, and here you might only have maybe a 1.5 or 2-inch waste line, or even less than that, who knows. And those extra 2 inches or so make all the difference of being able to actually flush your toilet paper. And I would say the best thing to do when you're faced with such a situation here, and if you are not prepared, is to just find a different restroom. However, if that is not an option, then the big problem is, if you did put toilet paper down one of these bathrooms that have insufficiently sized piping, the system will eventually fail. It'll jam, and that's just something about the laws of physics and small pipes. And even without the toilet paper, the commode will probably still jam up and won't function very well. Public transportation in Seoul. The city of Seoul has several public transit options, including train, bus, and subway service. A one-day bus and subway access card costs about $4, and from my experience here in Seoul, for the 10 days that I was here, the subway serviced nearly every part of the city that I needed to go. I never felt the need to hire a taxi or Uber, which also services Seoul, as public transit was so readily available. And if you are traveling to or from the airport, which is located approximately 30 miles from the downtown area, there is a direct train which services the airport and has minimal stops. A one-way ticket by train from the Incheon airport to downtown Seoul is only about $10, and considering the distance traveled, is a fairly good deal. And off in the distance is the Namsan Tower, which is a 770-foot tall communications tower built in 1971. Originally used to block TV and radio signals from North Korea, it is now used to broadcast local TV and radio stations to residents of Seoul. Also, an observatory was later added to the tower in the mid-1970s, which is still in use today. If you are new to the city, then it's probably fairly easy to get lost on occasion, and I have found using the Namsan Tower as a reference point works fairly well to know my approximate direction that I'm traveling and to help get me back on track. And that will conclude my tour of Seoul, South Korea. Please leave your questions and comments below, and thank you for watching.